When that happens to you, when you get hurt, like, listen, you can have anger, you can feel upset, you can let the tears roll, but at the same time, you need to learn how to forgive.
Born in 92 on the block with the Sharks, come from a different cloth, y'all would get ripped apart. You want it diamond, then you gotta get it in the dark. We dropping nuggets like Carmelo went to Rucker Park. Now we eating from state to state, we scrape the plate. I put my eggs in a basket, took a leap of faith. I took a chance, now we grow and see the impact. Decoding success with special guests, now let's bring Matt.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Matt Labrie. You are rocking with us on the Decoding Success podcast. And finally, we are back with another roundtable discussion. Really excited to have my brothers here at this table with us as we are diving into a really, really deep, personal, vulnerable, transparent topic. So with that being said, I want to introduce my brother Ao and Orisses back in the house. My brother Phil Mascia. And listen, we have a new guest here. We listen. I skipped over him. He was ready to give me the dap.
I was.
I saw.
I thought we were going in order.
I saw it.
His hand went up. I know.
I left him up there. But with that being said, I want to introduce my boy Drew Meditz to the table. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. So Drew's new to the show. Amazing individual. Obviously, you already know Phil. You already know Ann. Also amazing individuals. So Drew, really appreciate you being here with us, brother. But today we are diving into a topic, and I did get this approved by everyone, although I kind of tricked them and potentially did them dirty in a way. But we've been working on some amazing things collectively here, and with that being said, each and every person at this table has put in the work on themselves in a way that not many people do. And I can say that and look at all of you and see it, right, from the conversations that we've had, which have been phenomenal. Some of which have left me speechless personally, like the one that we had at Drew's apartment. I just sat there in silence. Ann thinks I was tired, but I really respected that conversation. Yeah. So I'm just gonna throw it out there, popcorn style it, no order here. But what provoked you guys to start doing the work on yourselves in a way that not many men in particular do?
As the outsider here coming in, it's weird, right? Because I don't know you guys for a long time, but I feel like I've known you for a long time, if that makes sense, right? I think we all kind of having gone out to dinner, kind of feel the same way in that regard. And I think it's because of a frequency that we all put out that attracts the same frequency. And we've kind of had that conversation before. So I've known it's crazy. I've known Anthony for 10 years, maybe longer than that, 15 years, right? And we never actually, it was always a conversation, quickly, hey, what's up, how are you? It was always we were on the outskirts of friend groups, so it was quickly oh, what's up, hey man, what's going on? But we never really got into the depths of who we are as people or serious conversations. And then it was weird over the past year or so. We just started to get a little closer, and then Clubhouse started to come about. We started to connect that way, and then he introduced me to you guys, and it was all of a sudden it just made sense in that we all kind of were into similar stuff, all saw the world a certain place, and it just kind of made sense. So I think going back to your question, what got me into this is pretty much I think, and I don't know if this is the case for you guys also, but in terms of working on myself was coming from a place where I was unhappy and needed to fix that.
I love that.
Yeah. So for me personally, it was I was, I'm a fellow entrepreneur, born and raised in New York City, which is probably another reason why we all hit it off right away. And having put in, I've had the business for 14 years, I'm 34, right? So I started the business when I was 20. So putting the time in throughout my entire 20s building this business, I woke up when I was 27, 28, and I spent 8 years building this thing. It was the only thing that I really put my efforts into, but the rest of my life was lacking. And there was something there that was just missing, and that's what kind of put me on that path. So it was a relationship fell apart. I was about to propose. She broke up with me a week before I was going to propose to her. I was completely blindsided by it because I was so into the business. I had no clue what was actually happening around me. And then I realized something has to change here. I have to start figuring out how to work the business differently, and then also I have to start putting more time on myself, enjoying the free time that I actually have, which put me towards like meditation and mindfulness, working out more because I feel better when I work out and I move. So like it took that low point in my life where I literally woke up and was just like, okay, relationship just fell apart. I can't be working any more hours physically than I currently am. And I'm just like completely miserable. I might have a lot from the outside perspective, but like internally I was just completely like, you know, I wouldn't say depressed, but like just confused. And like that's what led me down that path, I would say, for me personally.
Yeah, I respect that. I also resonate with that super highly. I appreciate that share. But what about you guys?
So for me, to give a little context on it, 13, I seen the world of entrepreneurship, and it started through teen nightclub events. Saw that, did events up until I was 28. But while I was doing events, I also went to school for accounting. Old school Italian family, you know, get a 9 to 5, do the events as a side thing. And while I was in accounting, I wasn't fulfilled. The beginning of it was cool, but not fulfilled. And I knew there was something more. So I had left accounting and transitioned to a role with my uncle, godfather's company. And basically, long story short, just wasn't a fit. So I went from, hey, you went to school, this much money spent, had, you know, the dream job that everybody likes to have, and then not fulfilled. Going to another job that literally after 3 months didn't work out, and kind of on a downward spiral. And what I began to notice was I can't just grind my way out of this. I was treading water at that point. And I was honestly like hitting a downward, you know, going towards a ditch. And it was like, damn, I've worked this hard for this much stuff in my life, and I feel like it's all going downhill. What do? Do I go back? Do I go back to the place of being unfulfilled just to make people happy, or show society that I'm happy? Or what is the next step for me? And for me, the next step was, okay, I think it's time now to do this personal development, to do which I didn't know at the time was called inner work, but I had to work on myself because just working on the outside wasn't good enough. Mm-hmm. That's basically what it came down to. And I could keep treading water, and I could keep being unfulfilled, and I could have, you know, a mixture of anxiety, depression. So for a while, I had always looked up to people that, you know, I wanted to emulate. And individual for me, which we all know, is Tony Robbins. And at that point in my life, anyone who had gone to an event like that was seen as, you okay, bro? Are you weird? Like it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool. It was you know, like, are you sure, bro? Like, are you all right? You having, you know, whatever. But I just knew that if someone is going to that event, that's the person I want to be, happily married, you know, healthy, good family, good faith, and they're 7, 8, 9-figure business owners. Like, why not? Would I not want to be in that room? Got hit with an ad, and it was a Black Friday sale for Unleash the Power Within, his flagship event. And I went by myself. I paid $600, which at the time still is a lot of money. And I went by myself, and I was just like, for 4 days, we were throwing parties at that time, Matt and I, few individuals. We were throwing a party on a Friday and on a Saturday night. And his event was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I paid, I drove to Jersey. I came home Friday night, went to the event, got home 5 a.m., woke up at 7 o'clock, went to the event. And I went through 4 transformational days. So to answer your question again, it was downward spiral, feeling unfulfilled, and you can't just grind your way out of it. There's something more. And I had to learn that the only way to fix this was by working on yourself. And then it becomes addicting from there, and it becomes a never-ending journey, and I'm here today.
What about you, Am?
I'm actually psyched I get to follow up after Drew and Phil, because they both said 2 things that in my life were so crucial to going down the path I went and who I am today. So the first one is, when I was 19, I got exposed to Tony Robbins. My father brought me to his seminar, the same one that Phil had mentioned, just a different year. You're, a freshman in college? It's not exactly what your peers are doing, and it's not exactly what. I was like, what the hell? What are you doing for the weekend? Why can't you come to the bars and drink? You're doing what? Same thing like Phil said. Everyone's like, yo, is Ann okay? Is everything all right at home? Like, what's going on in your mind? I was resistant to go. the people in my dad's office and who he brought the prior year, all guys I looked up to, all guys that were like cool, older, just cool dudes. They went and they were raving about it, not just when they got back, for an entire year. And I'm like, that's some serious staying power. And they were so enthusiastic. I was like, you know what? Let me try this out. And my pops goes, hey, listen, I want you to come. I'm like, Dad, I don't know. He's like, you'll miss a couple days of school. I'm like, say no more. I'm in. Sign me up. I'm down. I went completely transformational, changed the course of my life, changed my the way I think, changed my outlook on life, just how I perceive just about anything, and just made me more conscious about my everyday actions. And you really just start analyzing things and trying to work towards a better you, which I think I always had high standards, but being at a course like that you really do a lot of inflection and just try to like better yourself, it lasted throughout my entire life. And like I mentioned earlier, you're 19, you're in college, everyone's partying. It's hard, and I was too, don't get me wrong, but it's very hard to find people in college that resonate with, self-development or self-betterment. People like, I would listen to this stuff in my car. Back when there were CDs, I would pop in the 6 CDs and like I'd have someone come in the car and they'd be like, in order to get the best from your life. And I was like, yo, what are you listening to? I'm like, oh, nothing. I put on like Hot 97 or something like that. Because I was like, no one gets this. Right. And it's only up until recently when I found guys like you that like, you guys get it. And I think, like Drew talked about earlier, crossing paths before in the past for many, many years, just kind of like surface level, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? I don't think you ever really went beyond that, only to find out many years later, it's like, damn, we have a lot of the same aspirations in life and we just never noticed it at these parties. But, following this path led us to now being friends, which is incredible. So I think that is what set up the work and my mindset at an earlier age. But also back to what Drew said too, and I think a lot of people will resonate with this. I know the individuals in this room and certainly a lot of the individuals listening is when you think you have a sure thing in life, when you kind of plan in your mind, like my life's going to go down this direction. This is my future. I had a girl that I thought for sure was going to be my wife. I knew it. Well, I thought I knew it since the moment I laid eyes on her, had a ring ready to go, and it just completely just deteriorated and fell apart. And at that point I felt blindsided by it completely, and I was in a deep rut, and I knew I had to get out of it, and I decided to take a solo trip to Thailand. I went for 2 weeks, was completely life-changing again. One of those moments where, I put it up there with Tony Robbins, where it's like one of those life-changing moments and trips. And going back to like the question at hand, the topic at hand today, right? Like, why do the work? Why? And we've heard this expression before, but I am enamored with the thought of it being comfortable and being uncomfortable. Like I always like to push myself. And if I'm not pushing myself to that point, I feel like I'm not growing. And I try to do things, and I want to say every day, but sometimes we have our off days, but every day I try to put myself in a position where like I am a little uncomfortable and I have to do something outside of my comfort range. And then when I look back 3-6 months down the line, it's not really that uncomfortable anymore. So doing the things that others are not doing, like, and this is only a few years ago, meditation. When people heard in 2015 I was meditating, same thing. Like, dude, are you okay? Like, what's going on in your mind? I would do yoga, journaling, deep reading, working out, those things. And to a lot of people, it's like, where do you find the time? You don't find the time, you make the time. And when you make that time and you make it a priority, then that's how you differentiate yourself from everyone else, and you find the people you're supposed to be hanging out with, like we are today.
Right. I love all of that. I think I resonate with a lot of it. I think for me personally, I started doing the work because I knew the people I wanted to be like in life did that type of stuff. So my example is actually Phil, right? We have a 4-year age gap, but in my earlier 20s, 4 years is actually a lot. Maybe not now at this point, because like, what the fuck is 4 years? But in your earlier 20s, when you're in your late teens, you're like, 4 years is a lot of time. So I saw Phil doing X, Y, Z, and I'll never forget, we were actually in Monaco when I actually booked UPW with Tony Robbins. I'm like, if I'm not spending enough money, let me spend another $600 fucking Tony.
Who does that too? Yeah. Like, what weird. Right, like instead of buying a bottle, you're out booking Tony Robbins. That's insane to cost.
Pretty much.
I know, that's insane.
Yeah, pretty fucking much.
Yeah.
And I did the work at that point in my life, although it was very surface level. Like, yeah, sure, I was going to Tony, but it was still very surface level. Like, I wasn't cracking through all of the fucking masks, all of the layers that were on top of me, whether it was just like layers that I created myself to fit in or stuff that society created on me. And it was very surface level. But regardless, I was still doing it. And then I resonate with the other part of the conversation we've had thus far, where it was like you got to a point, and I'm just saying you as in all of us, we've got to points where we've seen dark times per se, or like we've seen us in places that we did not want to be in much longer. You just weren't happy, right? Like we just weren't happy. And that happened to me this summer in June of 2020, where I was like, yo, it's time to really get down to this shit. Like it's time to really crack the fucking code. Whether that meant I started therapy, whether that meant I hired a psychotherapist as a coach, a former psychotherapist as a coach, flotation therapy, which I know Drew does as well. Amazing time just like spending it with yourself for an hour undistracted, totally deprived of your senses. Doing yoga. Like I never thought I would do yoga. I laughed about it. I'm like, what the fuck is yoga? Like I've been an athlete my whole life and then I'm fucking doing a downward dog, dripping fucking sweat. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm no fucking athlete. You know, like I'm dripping. So like all of those things really led me to do the work on myself in deeper and deeper and deeper ways. And I'm sure even for years to come, it's going to keep getting deeper. And I just resonate with all of you. But I'm curious because one thing that was pretty common throughout all of us was the fact that we kind of got to like a down point. I'm not going to say rock bottom because it might not have been rock bottom, but we got low and that's when we realized we needed to do the work. So my question to the table is, what can we tell the people that listen? What can we tell our sons, right? Because this could be generational here. What can we tell our sons to help them explore that without having them to get to the same point that we got, right? Because that's what mentorship is. Yeah. Like let's put it out there so people don't have to make the, not necessarily same mistakes, but take a little bit of a higher path in a sense, you know?
We have to make doing the inner work, or even just to someone who's young, like my future son, to even just start to think or talk about personal development, it's not gay. It needs to be the norm. It needs to be cool. And you don't have to become an overnight personal development guru. I've learned you can't skip levels. So the reason there is a common denominator here. We all hit an experience or an event which made us start looking inside. And I would in no way, shape, or form be doing the inner work that I'm doing now had I not started at level 1. You can't just jump to level 5 because you don't have to understand it. It's too complex. Right. Like, what is this? But make it cool. Make it a topic of conversation. Just like, watching sports or going to the movies. Like, make it a norm. What I would say is that by doing that, the rest of your life will just unfold and you'll be so ahead of the curve of where 99.9% of the world is, because when you work on yourself, anything on the inside then radiates to the outside. And that was one thing that I wish I knew a little sooner, is that by working on myself, every single bucket of my life, like I mentioned earlier, from the physical, the family, the fitness, the faith, the spirituality, the travel, everything is going to be at a higher level in that bucket, or you'll be conscious of these buckets. So I would say to my son, start early. It is the norm. I'm going to talk about it with you. All of your brothers and sisters are going to talk about it with you. I'm going to put you on other kids that are going to talk about it with you as well. It's just going to be the cool thing to do. And if you're hanging around the right people with the right family, raised the right way, you won't feel weird talking about it. You will meet a phenomenal woman so much sooner in life. You'll have a phenomenal family so much sooner in life. You'll have a phenomenal job or a business so much sooner in life. Everything's going to radiate, and you may learn at 20 years old what the guy at 60 still doesn't know.
So, like you just said, conversations like this, like we're having right now, are uncommon. In the vast majority of circles of friends, you can't really, you can, but it probably won't be welcome to have a deep conversation like this for a lengthy amount of time. Right. Guys usually oftentimes just block things off, move on, want to just talk about like generic guy stuff like sports and whatever, which is all we all love doing. But a lot of guys don't extend themselves this far, and is it any coincidence that there's 4 high performers in this room that are willing to have this conversation on a Friday night nonetheless? This is what we're doing. Yeah. But also that's why a lot of we're also ahead of the game in many areas of life. So what I would tell my future son, it's true, man. I would say downs are inevitable. There are slumps in life. Every great Hall of Famer went through slumps. But what's more important is the bounce back and recognizing when you're in that slump, because it's going to happen. It's the ebb and flow of life. It's going to happen. But when you can recognize when you're in that slump, work on your mechanics to getting back, to finding your groove, to getting your swing. And you know what? You might not get on base, but you might foul a couple balls off. You might strike out a number of times. But guess what? Once you make that contact and get that sweet spot back and get that swing back, it's being in flow like we've talked about before. It's like you find your flow and you find your path again. So recognize it. Don't get bent out of shape. It's going to happen from time to time, but get your swing back and find your game again.
Yeah, it's weird because what you were just touching on too, like I've had more vulnerable conversations with the 3 of you than I have with some of my friends that I've known for 15 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the honest truth. And I think some of you guys can probably also have that same conversation. Right?
Yes,
definitely.
We see each other, whatever, have some beers, watch some football, whatever, chill, whatever parties are going on, et cetera, et cetera. But like I've had more genuine conversations about life with you guys than I have with some people that I've known for 15 years. And I mean that truly. And I think it's just because we're open to the idea of communication. And I think that also starts with like going back to like what advice would you give to and I love that you put it this way, because I always say this, like I would never give advice to my younger self because I'm a true believer in that everything happens for a reason. And my path has been my path, so I wouldn't give any other advice for my younger self, because honestly, if I would have, maybe my path would have been different. I'm completely content with where I'm at right now, and it's led me on this path to self-improvement. So I love that you put it that way. Like, what would you mentor somebody else in that position to start? And I think I think everyone here can resonate with this as well. And you guys are huge Tony Robbins guys. I'm a huge Jordan Peterson guy, and huge JP fanboy. And one thing that he talks about, huge. One thing he talks about is it starts with like one minor change. Right? So like you're down the dumps about something, right? Whatever it is. So like for me, for example, it was, again, like just a breakup, being miserable at work, hating what I do, even it's my own business. Imagine like you're an entrepreneur and you hate what you do. I got to that point when I was like 27. Like I was 7 or 8 years in, I'm like, I can't work any harder. I'm miserable. I'm making good money, but like this life sucks, right? And like I had to change it at that point. So like it started with like one change. So it was like, all right, what can you do? It was like, all right, let's do some self-education here, right? So like the first book I would say that kind of turned me in that direction was The Power of Now, right? Which is basically like learning to live in the present moment, right? So that was like, I was always afraid of meditation, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I was afraid of meditation because I thought it would take away my competitive advantage, right? So it was like, I don't want to meditate because like I'm so on edge and highly caffeinated and productive that like this shit's gonna take away my edge and I need to fucking crush, baby. I need to fucking kill, right? I made a business that way for 7 years, put my head down, crush shit. So I was terrified of meditation. Read The Power of Now. I was like, maybe I should slow things down a little bit and see where it takes me. Turns out like that put me on the path towards meditation, mindfulness, which actually made me a better business person because I was able to see things outside, not react to stuff right away, think things through, be mindful. Like it just changed my entire approach to business. And then the second thing was, all right, like you're unhappy with your business, and we've spoken about this in Clubhouse too, right? Like I looked at a book that could possibly change the way that I was having my life, like working so much. So for me, it was the book Built to Sell, which to me basically described pretty much in a way like if your business is built around just you and your business partner, it's not worth shit. You're a business owner, you're not an entrepreneur. It's not scalable, it's not anything. Like you're pretty much, you're gonna be a slave to that business. You might as well be an employee, right? So like those two things when I was younger, right? So it was like, it literally just took one little change for me. It was like read one book. Then one book became 2 books. Then 2 books became 3 books, right? And then it took me down this path of self-education. Then I was like, you know what? You were a collegiate athlete and swimmer. You were super happy when you were training, right? What else can you be doing? Went to a CrossFit gym. Just literally walked into a CrossFit gym. Started working out again. So like it was like one thing, read a book. Then it was like, okay, start working out. Then and things kind of escalated from there. So I think like my advice to a younger person to get on that path is like literally just take one thing a day, morning routine, whatever it is, just change one thing, and this is why I go back to Jordan Peterson, which is basically take one thing and literally the momentum starts, man, and it builds from there.
Right. Why did you think, and this is you, Drew, and I guess all of us can talk about it, but like, why did you think meditation, I just want to clarify too, like, what was meditation going to do negative to you? Like,
I saw it as like weak, right? Like, it's like you're this Italian male brought up in New York. Like, listen, none of my uncles or my father or anybody is meditating, right? Like, it's just like let's be real, right? Like, all these guys that I grew up with, like, no one's sitting there and waking up in the morning and being like, you know what? Let me take 10 minutes to meditate, right? Like, it's just not happening. Yep. My father's form of meditation was he would go outside and have a cigarette.
Yep.
Right? I realize that now. Right? But like back then I didn't know that. Right? Like that was his form of meditation. As like unhealthy as that is, that was like his form of like being like, let me separate, take a moment to collect my thoughts, whatever. Like, so I just thought like I was so caught up in like, let's say like Wolf of Wall Street, like fucking balls to the wall, head down, work your ass off, 80 hours a week, just keep going, more caffeine, like that. I just was losing sight of like everything else in my life, or even just like making like sound decisions, writing an email without getting aggravated, right? Pitching somebody and being in control because I took 2 seconds before the meeting because I was super stressed to take a breath, go into the meeting and give off that energy of being in control, as opposed to like being surrounded by a bunch of stimulus, right? I just think it was one of those things for me where it was like I literally just thought it was one of those things where it was like just fucking work as hard as you can, keep pounding away, and everything's gonna work out for you. Right. And that was for me like where I just thought it was like I thought only like pussies like meditate. Right. You know?
No, I get that.
Yeah, it was for the weak. That's how it was viewed. And it was just like, you know, you work this hard, like he said, you're grinding it out. And I think, and also not only does it seem weak, it seems like pie in the sky. And it's very tough when you look at it from the outside and you have no idea. It just seems like uncomprehendable. Like, how does this help you? I think it comes back to the common denominator of that experience. When you have an experience and you realize, I pushed this hard, I'm still unhappy, maybe there's a better way. Yeah.
How do we break those social norms of masculinity? Because that's what it is, right? That's exactly what it is. Yeah. And we are with having conversations like this. Like 100% we are. Like people are going to hear this, and more people need to hear stuff like this because men are tough. Men are, macho. They pound their chests, but men also can cry. Men can, and listen, not every day. I mean, listen, if you want to cry every day, you cry every day. Right. Whatever suits you, whatever floats your boat, that's totally cool with me. But the suppression and the ideas of what society just piles onto us of like who we're supposed to be is something that really does need to be broken, because that will drastically change the suicide rate in Silicon Valley. That will drastically change the amount of men that have heart attacks. Like that shit's for real. Like that shit is really fucking real. And I brushed it off all the time. Like I would always brush it off. I'll never forget Damon talking about like the rate of suicide in Silicon Valley. And I was just like, whatever, maybe whatever. I didn't even think twice about it. And then I really looked at it now and I'm like, holy shit. It's because they're just like fucking balls to the wall. Right, like all the time. So like, what do you guys feel like we can do? Maybe not even just us, but like everyone. Like, what can we develop into to kind of like break that?
So what I think it was already touched on, and in regards to the deep diving, and I think there is that stigma regarding things like meditation. Like Drew talked about it. And Phil and Matt, you both touched on it too. I was so apprehensive to meditate. I'm a high energy guy. I didn't want anything messing with my energy. When people meet me, it's usually one of the first things I get is like, oh, positive energy or high energy guy. I love that. I thrive off that. Right. I have more energy than a 17-year-old. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a high energy. I love that. I didn't want to lose my edge.
That's it. Yeah, that's the word. You lose your edge. Yeah.
I didn't want to lose my edge, and I'd see, and now I think life has drastically changed so much. Like when we used to think meditation, like I think even like 6-7 years ago, you think of somebody sitting on a mountain, right? That's so true. Long gray hair.
They didn't teach us this shit in school either, man.
No, they didn't.
No. That's crazy, right?
So I always was just like, you know what? I am not going to get ahead in life taking timeouts like this. And I remember it's funny because Drew talked about his pops and how like he coped, had a cigarette, that would chill him out. So I remember talking with my dad about meditation. He was so on the fence about it also for the same exact reasons. And one of the things that kind of, I guess, opened his mind up to potentially trying it, and though he never did, to this day, he still hasn't done it. But he found out that the Beatles had done something called transcendental meditation.
Yeah,
and my dad's
TM's huge.
Yeah, my dad's a huge Beatles guy. He plays guitar every day.
Your dad's cool as shit.
Yeah, he's cool as shit. He's a cool dude.
He also looks like the weatherman.
Ernie Anastas.
Ernie Anastas, man. Dead ringer. Dead ringer, dude.
That and Wayne Newton a little bit of both. So we would have conversations, and he was so, because he's like, I got that from my pops. Like, he doesn't want to lose his edge, and I got it. So he never actually tried it. And then for me, to be honest with you, Matt, your question was just, all right, how do we get guys to kind of just, change their stance on certain things? For me, what was the catalyst was, I'm not going to get into all the details here, but it was New Year's. I was with the girl I was dating. An ex came, started getting like in the way, causing a scene, and I finished the scene. And I just wasn't having any part of it. Mm-hmm. And I still honestly don't even have regrets about it because I held my own and I did what I had to do. But I was more disappointed in myself for losing my cool. It didn't have to get there. Was there a lot of tequila shots involved? Yes, there was a lot of tequila shots involved. However, the day after, when you're just kind of sitting with yourself and your thoughts and you're replaying the night over and over again, it was just like, I could have completely avoided doing that. I didn't have to go that route. And that's what actually made me start meditation, was that fight. Yeah. Because I just knew, I was like, it didn't have to come to that point. And I got mad at myself for losing me. Not for this kid being, a jerk and doing what he did, but just me just knowing that there was another way to go about it. And then I lost complete control, and I don't like losing control like that. So for me, it came from a place of being overly like aggressive and being like, my testosterone kicking in at its peak. And that's when I realized, like, not everything has to go to extremes. Let me take it down a notch. And that's what opened my eyes to meditation and changed my world.
For me, it's the simple concept of each one teach one. So growing up, meditation was never spoken of. Business was never spoken of. My parents both worked very hard. They got home 6 p.m. When it was dinner time, it wasn't time to talk about growth talk or business. It was time to just, hey, let me decompress, let me make food, let's eat, let's go to sleep. And you get on the hamster wheel. But I think I looked up to certain people growing up. One of them was my dad. When I was 13, how I got into nightlife was a gentleman that we worked with. I later became a partner with. I just really liked how he designed his life. And I didn't know that term at the time, life by design, but basically I looked up to him. I wanted to be like him. So I think if people who are in our shoes and what we're doing right now could just keep doing what they're doing and not suppress it, you don't even, I hope you'll vocalize it, but you don't even need to vocalize it. You just have to do it. And a younger Phil, Matt, and Andrew will see that and want to do it and think it's the norm. Because I thought whatever he did was the norm. And that goes to a whole nother subject, because that means both good and bad that he did, I thought was the norm. So if we could just do the good by just literally doing it, it'll become more of the norm, and it'll just have that compound effect.
Right. I love that. So 2 of the 4 of us had brought up relationships kind of having an impact on why they've been provoked to pursue a deeper understanding of themselves, do inner work, etc. I'm the 3rd of the 4th, because that's exactly what it was for me. It was just like realizing something due to a relationship, and it was just like move forward, like literally like start fucking doing the work that you need to do, because it's very evident at this point. And it came about from a relationship. So I'm curious, like, why do you guys feel like relationships reveal that type of stuff to us?
I mean, for me personally, the relationship thing was, had a lot to do with how I was brought up. So my parents are 65 now. They've been together since they were 16. Right?
God bless, man.
Yeah, it's incredible. Bless. Yeah, it's really incredible when you look at it, right? Truly remarkable. And I think like knowing that, and then also like my 2 sisters right now are married. They have kids. Right, like there was a lot of pressure on me, I would say, to have a family, and what was happening in my life is I was going from relationship to relationship to relationship, and it wasn't until I would say I've had 3 serious relationships. It wasn't until I had some time to myself where I was able to do that work that we're talking about. And I'm talking about work that, like, I'm 34, so I'm talking about work that was done like when I was 32. So this is like recent, where I had some time to myself, where I was figuring out my attachment problems. And what that did is it sent me down a journey of self-love. And I think that is so important for anyone in terms of being a high performer or going down this route of self-improvement, right? Or whatever it is that we're going to call it. You have to have that self-love, because what that does for you specifically is it allows you to be a better partner for the next person you're going to be with, be a better father, be a better brother, be a better friend, because you're so filled with love that you're not looking for that attachment or for favors or for expectations of any person that you're around, because you know that you have that within yourself. So for me, like, going through the relationships, that's what was my biggest takeaway from that, which took me down a huge journey in terms of being able to figure that out through therapy, through a bunch of books that I've read, through just talking to guys like you, right? Like, just being able to be alone. And I think this is something that's, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, everybody too. Like, do you know how many people, like, in this day and age are so uncomfortable in silence with themselves?
Too many, yes.
Right? Like, we are so stimulated by our phones, by email, by TV, by our friends, by a group chat, by whatever, Clubhouse, which is the new thing, right? Like, whatever it is, like, there's so few people in this world that are completely content with silence and themselves. And for me, I know, like, Matt, for you, 2020 was difficult. I know, like, you mentioned that, like, June of 2020 was like, you hit a point where you're like, I got to figure some shit out. Last year for COVID, being isolated by myself with my dog was so huge for me, because I was forced to be alone with myself and see the beauty in that. Like, literally, like, and it's always one of those things too, like, the grass is always greener. So you have, like, some friends who are with families, you know, and they have whatever, and they're like, you know, like, it's crazy in here, and my kids are going nuts, you know, like, whatever. And it's like, and then you have yourself who's kind of by yourself, and you know, you can look at things a million different ways, but you're like, I'm appreciating this time alone because it's perfect for me right now. And that's exactly what I need to be okay with. And, like, the next relationship that comes, etc., like, whatever it is, like, I just know that, like, I'm not looking for attachment or for expectations from my next partner, because I have it within me. So I feel like that's just going to make me a better person for whoever I'm with next. I'm curious to hear, what you guys think on that.
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's very similar to that. I think the relationship revealed to me that I was seeking everything that I had inside of myself from someone else, though.
Yes.
Right? So, like, I was continuously seeking the attention, the reassurance. And
reassurance is huge. That's the big, right?
That's a love language, so that's okay, right? Like, I'm okay
Words of
with
affirmation.
that. Words of affirmation. I'm okay with that.
I love it. By the way, this is so great that we have, you can say the love languages, and everybody knows what we're talking about. And it's not chicks, it's a group of men. It's 4 men, literally, like, of course, words of affirmation.
Listen.
You don't know yours?
The only thing Gary Chapman missed in that book was food being a love language.
I guess it could be gift giving.
It could be.
I guess it could fall.
It could be. It could be. But seriously, like, everything that I was desiring was supposed to be coming from myself, and that relationship just revealed it like that. It was like, dude, you're not getting it. And that put me in a little bit of a down place, because I didn't realize at the time, like, I had it, right? Like, I had it.
Right.
And and listen, it's a lot bigger than just that. Like, it made me realize that I needed to do reparenting, right? Like, I didn't necessarily, and listen, I'm not shitting on my parents. I love them. But at the same time, they did the best with what they knew how to do.
Right.
Although they may have been emotionally irresponsible or whatever the case is. And, like, that was a really big thing that I needed to work on as well, because it goes all the way back to me being a fucking baby, like a child.
And think about, and you and I have had this conversation privately too, like, think about, like, our parents didn't have the resources that we have.
Correct.
Right. Okay, so, like, the work we're talking about right now, like, they couldn't listen to an audiobook, right? To teach them about self-love. Like, that didn't exist.
Right.
Like, that didn't exist. So, like, our parents did the best with what they could, right? And, like, that's why I personally feel like everybody should, and I'm curious to hear everybody's take on this, but, like, I was the same way I was terrified of meditation, I was terrified of therapy. Right? But everybody has somewhat of childhood trauma, just because just because of,
It's life.
It's life, right?
It's
like no matter what
fucking
it is.
life.
It could be like your sister stole your toy, right? Like but there's some trauma that's there that you just kind of have to talk about, bring to the forefront, and just become self-aware to realize, like, I realize now there's some stuff that happened in my life that, like, I wouldn't have known, and I'm not self-aware enough that I have behavior patterns now that exist from when I was a kid. And like stuff that I was trying to do. Like it's crazy, but I've learned that now by putting in some work to realize like why I'm acting in that or going through that same behavior pattern. Like there was a time in my life where I was literally just in a circle of the same behavior pattern. Exactly. It wasn't until therapy that I broke that pattern.
So
that's the key.
And there's a gentleman that's in our clubhouse room that frequents the room often that says this quote. I don't know who it stems from, but we've all heard it. Show me the child at 7 years old, and I'll show you.
Who says that in the clubhouse?
Jay.
Oh, does he?
Jay.
Shout out to Jay.
Jay all the time. Shout out to Jay. He's gonna love that shout out
right now. But I think it's such a great quote. Show me the child at 7 years old, and I will show you the adult. And wouldn't you say, not that obviously we've changed, but how many similarities are there to you when you were 7 to now? Like, I feel like
it's so true.
The kid that was mean, like the super active, hyper kid that was always like trying to like, just please and just like trying to make jokes and be like the life of the party. I feel like I'm still that dude. You know what I mean? I'm still that guy, and there's so much truth to it. So that's why I think, it always comes back to tell me about your childhood because it's so defining. And that's why when, we talked about our future children, our future sons, daughters, we know that stuff now. Our parents didn't have this guidance. They just had like village teachings that were passed on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. We have really no excuse to miss the mark or to really like neglect our children with all this information that we have at our disposal, which our parents didn't have. But earlier you asked about like relationships and why is that such a common thing that people seem to fall back on and bring up over and over again. And I think the reason is because in this world, most people only truly open themselves up to a select few individuals.
Agreed.
And oftentimes it's your significant other. And when that person knows you and you're just kind of your goofy self, you completely take down the walls and there's no front whatsoever, and it's just you being just your authentic you, and you feel like you got done dirty, or they just like completely brushed you off and took you for granted. That's why it hurts us so much, because we went in there with an open heart and open arms, and when we get disappointed or broken up with or whatever, we outgrow one another, it hurts so bad. It's because you don't expose yourself like that to everyone, and that's why I think it hurts so much, and why we keep recurring, keep talking about the one that got away, or that one girl that left me and just crushed my soul. Is because we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable, and in turn we got hurt.
Well, that's another thing men don't necessarily do when they experience that. They harden the fuck up. Like, you need to soften up when that happens. Like, when that happens to you, when you get hurt, like, listen, you can have anger, you can feel upset, you can let the tears roll, but at the same time, you need to learn how to forgive. Like, you really need to fucking learn how to forgive. And that was probably one of the hardest things for me to learn. Like, I get the Bible thrown at me. It's talked about so much in the Bible. Forgive. How? How the fuck do you forgive? Right? So, like, that's one thing that men don't do, because it's so in our nature. It's so societal to just harden up. On to the next one. Take some time for yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Those are very big opportunities to grow and to heal.
Yeah.
Those situations, like you get to
100%.
decide, does it go left, does it go right? And actually, so when you're in that moment, see, that what I've learned is that to reframe or to break the mask, you have to dance with what it is that's troubling you. You have to dance with it, and you can't run from it. And then while you're dancing with it, you have a chance to fix it. So those conversations can be huge. And something that I heard the other day, I'm not going to go on the air saying I made this up, but in our parents' generation, things that you hear like financial freedom or wealth, is, the next stage of generational wealth is like, having money. Well, in our generation, generational wealth, the next stage comes from healing. Healing is generational wealth. If we could pass on healing to our kids, that is generational wealth beyond what money can do. Because if you're healed, you can make all the money in the world. And to get back to your question before, even what I've learned recently in dating someone is that anyone in life that you meet, they're just mirrors to you. So when I was 26 and I went to Tony Robbins, my mirror was my boss of the accounting, my family members, my uncle. These were mirrors that I had to look at, and what I didn't like about them, I truthfully just didn't like about myself. I didn't understand that for a long time, but it's the way you look at someone or you think about someone, it's just how you think about yourself. So I'm looking at my uncle, I'm looking at the accounting professor, I'm looking at my dad, and then, that's that level 1 of healing. Well, then relationships is now another level of you looking at it in another sexual partner, whether it be the same sexual preference or a different one. And anything that you, let's say, don't agree with them is things you really just don't agree with about yourself. It's really all it comes down to, because you can be compassionate, you can take the chance to talk it through, heal it. And it goes back to what I touched on earlier, like there's no end game to this healing or evolving or inner work. It's just a level by another level, by another level, by another level, and that's how you just keep leveling up.
So what Phil just said about healing, I think, is super important. I think, Matt, you talked about it a little bit as well. So after a breakup and it's over, a lot of times what I've seen, countless instances with my friends, it's happened to me too, where you have to ask yourself, are you truly heartbroken because the love of your life got away, or are you pissed off? Are you angry? Are you resentful of how it unfolded? And a lot of times, I think we're just more thrown off and pissed that it ended the way that it ended, and that's why we can't get over that situation. It's not so much you can't get over that person because maybe deep down they weren't even right for you, but you're just so agitated and turned off by how it ended, and the ending is really what people can't get over. I've been there before myself. I have a lot of friends too that they knew they weren't right for one another, but they can't get over it because it ended in such a disgraceful way. That is what they're having trouble getting over, not the person, the ending of the relationship. And I think too, if you recognize it, and I think this happens with maturity, with age sometimes too, is I look at these things as a filter, and okay, it's kind of leading me to the man I am today. And without that relationship, I wouldn't have been the man I am today. And it kind of 100%. It kind of led me down this different path. And at this moment, I'm 36. I still haven't found, the love of my life who I'm supposed to be with yet. But I keep that faith that everything I've been doing is that filter to find that person with the true intention of when that day does happen, I'll be like, this kind of all makes sense. I have the faith that will happen.
I love that. To kind of, we've been rocking for 50 minutes now. It doesn't even feel like 50 minutes.
No, like 5.
It doesn't feel like 50 minutes whatsoever.
We did this the other night for 4 hours.
Yes. That's very true. The only difference is Pierre's not here.
Yeah, sure. If I could have brought him, I would have brought him.
Bro, he deserves a seat at the table.
He really does.
He deserves a seat at the table.
People need to know who Pierre is.
Oh, yes. That's my French Bulldog. He's 3 years old. He is the oldest dog in Williamsburg because every other dog is 6 months old. Everybody got a puppy during COVID. So he's the vet. He's adorable. He's 34 pounds. He's a big ham. As Matt likes to say. He really is.
He's a fucking tank.
He's a tank. He craves more attention than his papa.
But he also gets it.
Saying a lot.
He gets the attention.
He's the ultimate wingman. I will say that. In a full disclosure, literally, you take that dog around Domino Park, and it's amazing what he can actually do. I've seen him. This is true. My friends who are in the building. I have a couple of friends in my building who are married, engaged, etc. We'll take our dogs for a walk or whatever. It's funny because most of the people I met in my building, I met through my dog. He literally, it's like almost he's trained. He will only go up to girls who do not have engagement rings on.
Oh my God.
It's like he goes. It's like he goes. He makes like a beeline for the one girl who like does not have a ring on. It's insane.
Talk about a
He's
filter.
the ultimate wingman. He's the
Talk
ultimate
about a
wingman.
filter.
He really
I
is
love that.
impressive.
What a
So
tank.
that's Pierre.
That's Pierre.
He's quite the legend.
He is. He is. So to kind of cap this off, we've touched on numerous different things. I'm curious as to what you guys, and this is going to be from a male perspective, but we have a rather large female audience here as well. What do you guys think women need to do to adjust to men like us? Right? Men that are vulnerable, men that are transparent, men that are raw and real, that have done the work. We're not fucking stagnant in life. We're moving the ball forward, you know?
Yeah, for me, it's not that complicated at all. It's really just being supportive. And if you've ever been with somebody as a high performer, an entrepreneur, somebody who has big dreams, if you've ever been with anyone who is not supportive, you realize how crucial that is to your happiness, your success, and your compatibility. So it's really not that big of an ask. I notice a lot of girls that I dated like to say, not all, but some of them like to say how supportive they are, but their actions don't back up the words. But they go, "I always support you." I hear that more than you actually do it.
Right.
You know? So I think when you're with somebody that has super high goals, that wants to separate from the pack and just continue to rise, you have to be on that journey with them, and there's going to be times where we need your support, and we maybe we had a pretty crappy day. If you lift us up after a tough day, you will get rewarded 1,000-fold out of our appreciation for you for understanding us. So I would say it's super simple, and it's unfortunately less common than it should be, but just being supportive, and in turn you'll get the support back.
I love that.
Yeah, it's funny. We had a clubhouse yesterday, and it was, can two high performers coexist in a relationship?
Right.
And the one thing that I spoke about was, like for me anyway, it's more or less like, yes, I've done work on myself, but I'm in no way completed in that work, right? So what I'm looking for is somebody who, and it's funny, I posted this today, like somebody who's willing to heal with me for the rest of our lives together.
What is that book you're reading?
Young Pueblo.
Okay.
YP.
Right. I know who he is.
Yeah.
I didn't even know he had a book. Inward.
So every day I wake up, I go to the book, and he's got some form of meditation that's just on the page. It could be a paragraph, it could be a page, it could be one line. And that's it. I wake up, I read that, and then I go about my day and kind of continue from there. He's got another one that's coming out too in a couple of weeks. But it's funny. It was that exact page when we had that exact conversation, right? And like what I'm looking for anyway in somebody is basically somebody who's just open to the idea of like, I have a shadow, as everybody else does.
Correct.
We all do, right?
Correct.
And I understand that she has a shadow. And what I'm willing to do is, whoever I'm going to be with next, I am willing to focus on the really good things about her and let her work on and acknowledge and be self-aware about this stuff that she has to work on. So she's going to have her moments where, she's going to have whatever, our days, like we all do. But I think what's most important for me is that somebody who's open and in communication and just self-aware. And I talk about that all the time. In all relationships in my life right now, even like in friendships, like what I'm looking for more than anything is just somebody who's self-aware. And when I say self-aware, somebody who's done some work to just realize that like they have some faults, they're open to what they are, they're aware sometimes that they fuck up, and they're open to communication, and more so like they own shit. Like I've been in previous relationships that like where one in particular where like there was just no ownership of mistakes, and that's what drove me crazy why I couldn't be with that person anymore.
Right.
It's like I'm gonna fuck up, you're gonna fuck up, but like if you don't own it and you just deny that shit, like I don't want to be with that person. And again, that comes from doing some work and being self-aware, and you don't get to that point unless you put the work in. So like for me personally, what I'm looking for moving forward is just somebody who is legit willing to just put the work in, realize that we're both fucked up, like we all are, right? And just be willing to work on themselves and be a better person than they were the day before, and be a better person in a year's time than we were a year before, and be a better person in 10 years' time than we were, right now. And lead a good example for our kids. To go back to what Phil was talking about and what Anthony was talking about, is that healing. Like when I want to have a family, I want my kids to be able to be open and communicate. I want to be able to show them stuff with my wife, to be able to show them like, meditation is okay. You can't be vulnerable. You can't communicate if you're hurting, right? You should talk to somebody if you're hurting. Like, my entire life, for the most part, I just buried shit for a long time.
As do many men.
Right? It was like, I didn't communicate anything. If I was hurting, and no matter what it was, like, I just buried it. Keep head down, work hard. Head down, work hard. Like, that was my motto. And like, what I'm looking for now is literally just somebody who's a partner who understands me. And the only way that she can understand me is if she understands herself.
That's it. Yeah.
That hits the nail on the head.
You both said it very well. So a lot of what I'm going to say touched on what they just said. I think the number one thing women can do going forward is to be able to hold space for us. By holding space, we can have a conversation without judgment. And I think for women to hold space and for that to become the norm, it goes with what both of you have already said. They need to be more self-aware, and they need to be interested in doing the inner work for themselves and not just for us. So it can't be a chore, they have to want to. Then we tread along this parallel line where we're both going in the same direction, and it's really cool. And now, and we talk about this all the time, but like commonly in life, husband and wife don't talk about this. They don't hold space for each other. And that's why there's divorce. That's why they're on separate pages. Women are really good at holding space for other women. And when they talk with each other, you don't really know if what they're saying is the truth or it's their version of the story. And guys are pretty bad at holding space for other guys. I'm grateful I'm in the room with you guys. We all hold space for each other, but like, this is a very small percentage. So if a man and woman can hold space for each other, the likelihood of that relationship working out, oh my God, it's so much better. So, and I don't want to have to force the woman to hold space for me, or to want to do the self-awareness work or the inner work. They have to want to take an interest in it themselves. And if they do that, I mean, there's nothing that you can't get through.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't make anyone do something they don't want to do, right?
Right, 100%.
And that's a struggle for men too, and we talked about that at dinner literally 2 weeks ago. That was a conversation at dinner. But I think from what I've experienced, Drew, I resonate with everyone. When it comes down to the healing aspect, I think that's really big for me. And this is a very broad statement, but I think a lot of women have taken on a lot of masculine energy. A lot of masculine energy.
Especially in New York City.
And that's cool. Listen, that's cool.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Especially girls who were born and raised in New York City specifically.
Agreed. Agreed. But the thing is, they lost the ability to transition back into the feminine. Right? Because too masculine won't exist. There's too much friction. And if a man just becomes feminine the whole time, they're going to be turned off.
Yep.
Right? Like, they're just, that's instinct. They're just going to be turned off, and that's cool. But I think having the understanding of that, and also what it comes down to for me is the self-awareness is great, but you can't just have an interest in the healing. You have to have a commitment to it. Right? Because there's a big difference between interest and commitment. I'm interested in having a Ferrari, right? But like, am I committed to having a Ferrari?
Right.
And that will be shown through my habits, through my work ethic, so on and so forth, right? So that's pretty much what it is for me, and I resonate with what everyone said. But
It's big.
It's weird too, because even like going back to what we were saying before, like, the idea of like holding space for each other, like, I don't know if our parents necessarily even had that. Like, if that's a generational thing too, right? Like, I wonder about that sometimes. Like, I see it in my parents too, where it's like they've been together for so long, right? But it's like they kind of just have their own thing kind of going on. So I kind of wonder like how, because it's like like people who've been together that long for 60 years, it's like, it's insane to me.
Right.
You know, like I'm 34, I'm still trying to figure some shit out. You know?
Now, does that teamwork, do they have the secret? Like, is that the secret of working relationship?
Reveal it.
Right.
Reveal it.
Or has the game changed, like the NBA? Like, the game evolved. The game is not the same as it was 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Now. That's what it is.
Right.
Well, I'm just saying, the game has completely evolved. You can't play the old game anymore. That won't work in today's NBA.
Correct.
So, relationships, I sometimes wonder, are we missing out on what worked traditionally? Or are we just still finding and fine-tuning what currently works? Because as a society, we don't have it down yet at all.
I mean, I think that our parents and grandparents didn't have all the external stimulus that we have.
Right.
And you're right, temptation
And
too.
temptations, that's
Right.
really big.
cell
But
phones.
also, too, you ever see
Right, and social media. Let's be
Exactly.
real, right?
It's
Looking and seeing how everybody else's life is going. They didn't have that.
You could never, if you broke up with your ex, you might never see them ever again. Now, if you're like, I wonder what they're up to. You find out in 5 seconds.
And you also see all the quotes out there that say like, "Hey, we went through hard times, but we made it work." You see like the old couple near the car. That's how at least my parents and grandparents were. It was like, yeah, we hit bumps, but we made it work, and it's good, but it's also not the best because, as we've spoken of in the past, you can then become lovers to just friends and companions. So making it work is an external thing of validation. Like they can't see us broken because they'll think our family's broken. And I've seen that with my family. Like people that shouldn't be together are together just to prove a point to the outside that we don't crack, we don't fold. So they also need to heal, but they also didn't have the stimulus that we have. So it was like, okay, what are the other options right now? None. There's really none.
My parents did everything for their kids. And now it's funny, I watch them live like they do everything now for their grandkids. Like it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing ever. Like I truly say from the bottom of my heart, like my parents gave everything for us, me and my 2 sisters, and now they give everything for their grandkids. What I wish for my parents now, as an adult, is that I wish they spent more time on themselves. I wish they spent more time on their health. I wish they spent more time on their hobbies, and they were happier themselves and living vicariously through their kids and their grandkids. And I don't say that as anything that's ill-intended. For them personally, I just wish that they spent more time on themselves and put more time on themselves than they did their actual kids. If that makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
But like it's beautiful. I'm like almost crying because it's like what they did was beautiful for us. But like as an adult, I feel guilty now seeing what they did for all of us and wishing that they spent more time on themselves.
I think when you come to a certain age, and oftentimes it's in your 30s, and you see kind of your parents aging, and it's a little tough to watch, and you're like, in a sense, you're like, all right, I have to take a little bit more control and take on the reins of this family a little bit more. I have to take on an active role in guiding and leading. Right. And they're perfectly capable of doing it themselves. But, I struggle with that as well. Like I get frustrated with my parents for not, exercising or meditating, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, and doing things that, drink green tea, do these things. Come on, guys, it's so basic. And like, okay, we'll do it. They do it for like a day, and they don't have the drive behind it. It drives me insane. So I get it. And I think that, obviously none of us are parents ourselves yet. We don't have children. So our top priority really, outside of like just making sure, keep our parents proud and being, the individuals they raised to be, we also almost owe it to pay it back and make sure they're on a good track too. So I understand that desire that you have, Drew, and also that frustration when they're not following suit.
Yeah, you just want the best for them because they give everything for you, right? And it's like now you see them starting to, like whatever. Like I wish they exercised more and took better care of themselves because it was like literally like they couldn't have done any more for us. Like we were the all end all. They live vicariously through their kids, which is a beautiful thing. My grandmother was the same way. Like I will never feel the love I felt from my Nona ever. Like from another person for the rest of my life. I don't even care if that's my wife. Like she loved me more than anyone ever will for my entire life. Like you can't. It's weird. That's like generational.
You could do no wrong.
I could do no wrong in her eyes. Yeah, which is also a bad thing. Right? Like that, at least it's therapy and childhood trauma, right? Where it's like, I could kill someone and my Nona would be like, hey, he's a good kid. He smacks my cheek, right? But like that's why everybody needs therapy, right? Because it's like that's my point in that. It's like there's something beautiful in it, but there's also something where like you want to have that love for your kids and for your grandkids, but you also want to work on yourself and set the example for them,
right?
Which is like such a weird thing.
And I think the beauty and where we have to evolve to is we got to take the best of what they taught us, the best of what we're learning, because every generation is progressive and we're just trying to make it the best for the next of kin, right?
Yeah.
So take what they gave us, right? Take what we're learning. We don't have it all figured out yet.
No.
And then pass it to them, and then our kids are going to make it the best for the following, and let's just continue the progressive.
It's crazy, right?
way.
To think about like what our kids are going to podcast. Our kids are going to
Savages. Yo, we've been running for an hour, so we'll wrap it here. Any last thoughts on this topic in general?
I think going back to what I was talking about earlier, right? Like, I wouldn't change anything in my life because it led me down this path. And I believe that everything happens for a reason. But I think if we're talking about self-improvement and like what led me down that path, what I could give advice to anybody would literally be like, just if you're in a bad spot, it's literally just one change in your routine that leads to some momentum that then snowballs and leads to further momentum, and then you take it from there. So like, that's what I would leave it.
I love that. I love it.
I was going to say something extremely similar, actually. I love that. And it's all about creating a streak. You want to create a winning streak in your life. And the hardest thing to do is get that first victory. Once you get that first victory, then the second victory will come a little easier, and the third victory will come, and you might hit some bumps. You might have to start back at square one, and then you start the streak again. And you can have a bad day, but you don't want to create a habit and create a losing streak. So get that first win, build off that momentum, and feed into good habits. It's so easy to just, after a long day, just sit down, put on the TV, and just vegetate. That's your time to improve. It's so easy. What I did, I got this from Thailand. In the main lobby, they had a giant TV. It was like an old tube TV with the antennas on top. And it was all dusty. I don't know how they preserved it. It said, but in like somebody's finger, it said, "Do not watch me." And I just remember looking at that.
Sick.
That's crazy.
On my television, behind it, it's on a piece of paper. But if I'm not watching something specific, like a documentary or something like that's, the occasional big game, I flip it over to have that there. Do not watch me.
Wow.
Because that's your time to improve. That's the time to separate yourself from the pack.
I love that.
That's cool.
Any last words?
Yeah, both were good. I'll say something that I just recently posted on the gram. It's be curious enough to learn who you really are, ask the deep questions, and be courageous enough to live it out. And don't put so much pressure on yourself at 13, 18, 22, 25. You don't know what life's all about yet. I don't know what the hell life's all about yet. I'm 32. But still continuously ask yourself the questions, and I think you'll never go wrong living curiously and then courageously.
I love that. My last piece of advice here, or last words, is that everyone just got this all for free. So make sure you are leaving a rating and review if you haven't done so yet.
Hit subscribe.
Hit subscribe. Listen, we're on YouTube now. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel. Follow the amazing gentlemen that are here. And thank you for joining us, brother Drew. I'm not skipping this time. Thank you for joining us, brother. Until next time, everyone. Be blessed. Peace.